Hello there, football fans. Welcome to the Mercurial Trequartistas Gamecast, your weekly dose of Premier League passion, predictions, and proper football talk. By way of introduction, I'm Tathan, and joining me is my co-host, the man who frequently shares the kind of insight that makes you listen twice. Mark, how are we feeling?
Insight that makes you listen twice. Is that because it's so quiet the first time round?
So, what's on the menu today? We will start with Premier League talking points. We will then move on to our second segment, which is fantasy football tips for the weekend ahead. And we shall round things off with our third section, the obscure facts segment. This is our cult feature, which is building respect as well as headlines every week. So, let's dive straight into it. As always, much to talk about this week. If we start with a look at the Premier League relegation battles. So, for teams at the top end of the table, the business end of the season is usually regarded as being around Easter time. However, for teams at the bottom end of the table, the business end of the season realistically starts now if they want to secure their future in the Premier League. Having looked at things, the fight is unusually tight this season, with several clubs separated by only a handful of points. And looking at who is realistically facing a stint in the Championship, I think there's a little core group down there at the bottom. So Burnley and Wolves are gone, but possibly West Ham's, Forest, Leeds, United, Palace, and even Spurs might be part of that core group in danger. What do you reckon, Mark?
Yeah, I'd agree about Burnley and Wolves. I think they've been looking gone for a while. I still think West Ham are going to get away with it. I think West Ham are improving. I think they've got a little bit of a streak running now. I can see them getting out of it and dragging another club into that last relegation spot. I'm not sure it's going to be Leeds. I think they also are showing enough to stay up, but they're going to have to keep on getting them results, maintain a good home record. Uh, and I know you suspect Palace might be dragged into it. I think Palace might get away with it as well. I don't think it'll be easy. I think they're going to get away with it this year and then be in trouble next season. But the club I think are going to sort of sneak through the trapdoor. I think it's going to be Forest. I think Forest are going to have to look over the shoulder and they need to get something going quickly.
Yeah.
West Ham are sort of sneaking up behind them right now. Uh, Palace, while I do think they're going to get away with it, I think they need to get it sorted before the end of the season because their last game is against Arsenal. So, you never know. They might be playing an Arsenal that might have already sewn up the title by then, rest a few players. But, if the title's still on and it goes to the last game, that's not the one you want to try and save yourself from relegation. So, still a lot to play for. But my gut feeling is I think Forest are going to find the way slipping through the net.
What do you reckon about Spurs? That group of teams, Forest are in really bad form, but Spurs are as well. And we touched on this last week. Do you think Spurs could go down?
No, I think Spurs have got enough about them to be able to sort of stick it out. I don't. I mean, the first season of the Premier League, you had Nottingham Forest, where everybody was saying, "Oh, they're too good to go down. They're too good to go down." But that was a relatively small squad. I think Spurs, they've now got Solanke sort of playing back from injury. That'll be a good boost to them because ultimately they needed goals and they've got enough players. The only way Spurs fall into it is if they get themselves into a bit of a mental slump and one by one the results just don't go their way and then before they know it they're in trouble. But they've got enough quality players to not be there in the first place and there's enough games on their fixture list that are winnable games for Spurs. They shouldn't be in danger. If they remove the manager and go for the chaotic, yeah, another chaotic manager switch, and that doesn't work out, then yeah, that could be dangerous. But yeah, I think they will be fine ultimately.
So a few more scorpion kicks from Dom Solanke, and they should be
Hey,
okay.
well, I mean,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
can't hurt.
move on to story two now. So, the transfer window closed this week on the 2nd of February. If we have a quick look at the final week of the window, because there were some interesting moves. If we start with Jeremy Jacquet, I think he was secured right at the end of the window by Liverpool. He's a very highly rated young defender, and there were many high-profile teams in for him. Thoughts?
It looks a bit of a coup for that one because all the week before it was Chelsea, 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 and then out of the blue it was a Liverpool announcement. So talk about keeping it well and truly behind the scenes. They probably could do with a defender now, but if it's the only way to get the deal over the line, then yeah, that must be why they've sort of opted to have him signing in June properly. But yeah, could be a really, really exciting addition to the Premier League. Looking forward to seeing how he's incorporated into the team. But yeah, it was a very dramatic switch because all the reports the week before were pretty much saying Chelsea's the number one club. That's where he's going. That's where he wants to go. And then out of the blue, he's at a Liverpool medical.
Mm. Well, he's not cheap. He's young though. There were some really big hitters in for him. I understand off camera almost though, like Bayern, Juve, and Atletico were also sniffing around him. So it's quite a coup for Liverpool, as you say. So interesting. Let's see how the young man does. And then Jorgen Strand Larsen. So this has been bubbling under the surface for quite a few weeks, but Palace have got their man.
They have, yeah. Will it be enough? We'll find out. I mean, he did have a couple of good purple patches for Wolves, but is he as good as Mateta? Yeah, yeah. They look resigned to losing Mateta now. Uh, if if they don't think they can get Mateta into the right headspace that they need him to perform for the rest of the season, I'd say that would be a worry. If Stan Larsen's a purchase because they do doubt whether or not Mateta's motivation is going to be there, then it is a gamble. I think ideally they want to get Mateta firing for the back half of the season. Strand Larsen, he's got a particular set of skills. uh, Palace have been doing quite well with the passing, attacking football. They've lost so many players. The style's undoubtedly going to change a little bit. I think it's going to be a painful end to the season, but they're going to get away with it. Uh, Strand Larsen feels like another purchase for next season for me. I don't know. I don't know whether you're going to be picking him over Mateta if you can get Mateta remotivated.
But you've got three pretty good strikers there. So, like, I mean, I was going to talk about Mateta, but you've covered him off nicely there. But so there's him, there's Strand Larsen, and there's Brennan Johnson. That to me screams of a team that can score goals. If they can get the ball and feed these three guys properly, these guys should get goals. All of them are proven to a certain degree to be Premier League quality goal scorers.
Yeah, and I like Johnson's game. I think he will offer a threat. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of strange stuff going on with Palace behind the scenes. It seems to be spilling onto the pitch. I, I, yeah, this it's to all intents and purposes, it looks like a version of the team coming to the end of its cycle and rebuilding for the future. I long term, it won't be Mateta, Strand Larsen, and Johnson. Mateta will be going, probably in close season. So they've got to decide whether they're going to try and build for the next year, or they're just going to throw their best players onto the pitch and get the results. If you're going to go for the best players on the pitch, you have to Mateta's got to be number one choice.
Yeah.
But We don't know how aggrieved he's feeling at the moment because it sounds like there's been a lot of promises broken there.
Yeah, very astute, Mark. That's great. And just one more name. So Sandro Tonali. I think Arsenal were linked with him very late in the window. Any thoughts on that?
Well, he's had a really good record at Newcastle. He's been a fan favourite there. It was a bit of a random link. I don't really know what to make of it and how interested Arsenal were versus whether it was just a bit of agent shenanigans. I don't know. It just seems so out there. I would Arsenal be stronger with him? Who do they move out of that first 11 to to put him in?
I thought along those lines as well. The first time I heard the rumours that, where could you fit him in because they are strong. Well, in all areas of the pitch, certainly
Yeah.
in the areas that Tonali plays at for Newcastle. So, all good. All good. Shall we move on to story number three? So this
Oh,
is
go on.
an yeah, this is an interesting one that's broken in the last day or two. So, and it's about, do pundits actually owe current players a duty of care? So Virgil van Dijk has recently argued that football players who become pundits, they have, and he's used the term, a duty of responsibility towards current footballers when offering criticism. So he mentioned in an interview with Gary Neville that punditry is increasingly drifting into clickbait and provocation without considering the mental impact on players. And if you remember Van Dijk, he had previously called out Wayne Rooney. It was before Christmas, because Wayne Rooney made comments about Liverpool's lack of leadership, and Van Dijk, he responded by saying that's just lazy criticism. And I can remember that he actually, well, I won't use the word confronted, but he was stood next to Wayne Rooney after a game midweek and really looked quite uncomfortable seeing him there. So, but Van Dijk says that, well, sorry, rather, Van Dijk has said that he can personally handle criticism, but worries about younger players who live on social media and are more vulnerable. Obviously, he's an experienced player, and when he was their age, things were different. He stresses that criticism is normal, it's part of the game, but the tone and intent have shifted towards sensationalism. And he notes that younger players often check social media for praise after good games, and this makes negative comments more damaging. And Van Dijk continued that with social media growing ever more pervasive, the problem will only intensify unless pundits show a little more care. Strong words.
Yeah, yeah, and I think he's got a very good point, to be honest. I'm not really a fan of sort of like the modern games punditry, really. I think it's lost a lot of the objectivity it used to have back in the 80s, early 90s. Um, and that's going back to a time when they did have Brian Clough sort of doing a little bit of punditry as well on and off, whilst he would come out with some, outlandish anecdotes or claims. It was never anything that sort of came across as hurtful to the player or even bias. You've got Trevor Brooking, Jimmy Hill, professionalism, objective, uh, restrained in criticism, but it would be, tactically astute. It would be interesting. Um, and now you've got a situation where the modern game is very sensationalized. I think there is a bias problem. I don't, I can't sit through a Liverpool versus Man United game and enjoy, Carragher or Never just screaming in each other's ears whenever there's a goal or any kind of incident. Um, I don't know, maybe some people find that entertaining. I don't. It's I think it takes away from what should be a spectacle. The spectacle should be what's on the pitch, not what's behind the microphone. So yeah, I think he has got a point, and I think it works both ways as well. I think some sensationalist claims made by pundits of players early on in the career where they're building them up to be, oh my word, it's the next Messi. It's they've had. 15 minutes as a substitute cameo appearance. You
Mm.
can't be making that claim.
Yeah.
And you're putting so much pressure on the younger player straight from the off because then if he comes on, has a 90 minutes where they're not as effective on the pitch, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, what's happened here? They've had a downturn. So yeah, it can work both ways. The negativity, I think, is a little bit much. And I think there is a problem in football at the moment where analysis is very short term. Like one bad result, and all of a sudden it's a crisis. Back in the day, it used to take a sequence of games before the club badge was split in half, and they were claiming crisis on the back pages. So seasons are long old things nowadays. You it's not possible to go through an entire season without any bumps. So yeah, I think there is a point. I think Van Dijk's right. Punditry probably does need to change. The style at the moment is, you know, it's targeted to internet shorts, clickbait, and I don't think there's too much thought about what's going on for the player. Another good example of it, I think, as well, if you look at some of the punditry from the 90s, I think I might have pointed it out before, but there was a point where Andrei Kanchelskis gets sent off for Man United in a League Cup final. It's the last minute, penalties given for handball on the line. The referee's going to send him off, and Keegan's just, no, you don't need to do that, ref. Penalty's fine. Penalty's fine. You don't need to do this. I think that same bit of action in today's world, they're screaming for red. And yeah, I think perspective's just disappeared a little bit. It needs to come back. Whether it will or not, I don't know. I think that the modern world probably is here to stay. But Van Dijk's correct. There needs to be a bit more consideration, I think, for players
Mm.
mentally and emotionally.
I think it stems back to an overarching lack of kindness that seems to be prevalent in like societies all over the world. I mean, if people operate from a slightly more kind base, this would be less of an issue. And I'll also say that I think pundits should think about applying more intelligence and not just thinking about the next sensational quote. Some of the best punditry in recent years actually comes from people who are football managers because it's almost like listening to a professor talk about the game as opposed to a lowly undergraduate who's, not really been exposed to the levels of research that a professor has undertaken. The other thing I'll say is that comments made by pundits, they may fuel online abuse. There will be an average fan who's perhaps not as restrained or not as thoughtful as they should be on social media, and they may feel, having heard the pundit talk about player X this way, I can do the same, and they can be a lot more abusive because pundits have to sort of tone things down for TV, because they can't be fully open, and this can open floodgates for anonymous trolls. And thinking about this, I think ex-players should avoid feeding that cycle. On the flip side of that, and I've been thinking quite long and hard about this since watching the interview with Van Dijk. So, if such comments are affecting the confidence and performance of younger players, it's perhaps for the clubs to intervene and to consider introducing a social media use policy for their own players. I mean, if I owned a football club, my primary concern would be, firstly, the well-being of the players, and secondly, just as importantly as the well-being, the performance of my flock of players, and introducing restrictions upon players' use of social media may well be a prudent move by clubs in future.
Yeah, I think yeah, you're right. Punditry opinion can, can sway and influence the regular fans'
Mm.
uh, own sort of beliefs as well. Especially if it is as partisan as it has been in some quarters.
Use one point to illustrate this. Can you remember it was about 12 or 13 years ago? Alan Hansen, who we both love as a pundit, he was critical of Company on Match of the Day, and Company actually reached out to him midweek and said, "I don't really agree with your comments, Alan." And Alan and co, they invited him onto the show next week, and it was wonderful. And like because like Company, he was welcomed in, and Alan, said afterwards, well, I mean, even on show, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those things, and everybody was like so impressed with the way that like Company turned up, and the way he conducted himself. And now he's gone on to be an amazing coach. He's doing so well at Bayern. But could you imagine that happening in today's world? I mean, say, Neville or Keane or Carra was overly critical. We've seen Carra, he's done this with Salah. Neville and co, they've been very critical of like Man U players in, over the last 10 or 11 years since Fergie stepped down. So imagine they said something and then they invited said player onto their panel. It just, that feeling, it just wouldn't be there anymore. It's changed.
Yeah. I'm not sure they could cope. I don't think they could cope with trying to put that sort of an opinion to a player. And we've seen it. We saw it when Van Dijk sort of faced Rooney. Rooney
Mm.
did not want to know. He was sort of like, no, I don't want to sort of back this up anymore. uh,
Yeah.
Back in the day, I mean, you would have situations with where players or managers that had opposing views, they would turn up on the same football chat show. Uh, I mean, do you remember the Clough Revy
I've
one?
seen it. Yeah. It was
It's a
amazing.
remarkable bit of television.
Mm.
They clearly disagree with each other. They clearly do not like each other, but they debate it constructively.
Mm. Yeah.
There is no sort of like over the top clickbait headline grabbing
Mm.
comments. It's for me, it's a constructive conversation between two people that have very different football philosophies. I
Agreed.
don't think we get that now. I don't think you could put a pundit with one extreme view going up against a player putting their case forward without it going wrong. So, or the pundit just absolutely backing down because they don't want to be seen on TV having a counterpoint argued.
I think we can both agree that everyone, both sides, needs to start acting with kindness and dignity. That's the only way forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the best thing. So
The old school report must do better.
I love it. I love it. Well, there you have it. Three takes and enough confidence in the above opinions from us as a mid-table chairman shortly before his team gets hit by a transfer embargo. If we now move on to the fantasy football segment, so this is segment two of our podcast. Mark, over to you. Do you want to start things up?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it turned out last week I was indeed playing against Howland FC, but I wasn't just playing against Howland FC. I was playing against a player that went in two-footed. I was playing against the top of the league. Now, the last time I played top of the league, I won by one solitary point. Apparently, this didn't go down well because this time they played bench boost. So yeah, I toyed with playing bench boost, but I didn't because I wanted to play it at a more comedic point in the season.
But
So yeah, so it didn't work out. I did lose, but I lost to the bench, the extra bench points.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I can be okay with that. Uh, this week, I think I'm going up against Howland FC again, but it's Tate's Howland FC, and I don't think you captained him, did you?
Took him off. I mean, as I've been saying the last few weeks, his form has been okay. Well, no, he's been playing well, but he's not scoring that many goals. And I've opted for a different player. But on that subject, there's another City player, but I'll come on to this, of course. Semenyo, if you are going to captain a City player, perhaps go for him. But just a quick point. I mean, the other chap who you played, who's top of the league, just like using the bench boost, that's a mark of respect towards you. He was that fearful of your team.
Nobody. Well, that was it. I mean, I think I did a league double. I think I've done a league double over the the league winners for the last few seasons. So obviously he didn't want to he didn't want the same fate.
Well, I would say that fear is a great motivator.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, that says everything to me. It says everything to me. I will admit the deadline hasn't gone. So as far
yeah.
as our duel's concerned, I have made one transfer. I took out Saka
Hmm.
because he didn't play. He got injured in the warm-up, didn't he, last week? And I didn't rate his chances of making it back today. So I took him out and I put
Hmm.
Wirtz in instead.
Yeah.
But I
Uh,
haven't played any chips.
yeah. I've not played chips either, but I took out Foden, who's been woefully poor in the last few weeks, and I took out Morgan Rogers, whose form has dipped. So I bought him when he was playing pretty well, but I've taken him out. But if I just run through the games very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
quickly, so Bournemouth versus Villa. I think Bournemouth at home are going to be the ones to go for here. Their midfielders and forwards. Villa seem to be lacking a bit of drive at the moment. They lost to Brentford, which was a surprise at Villa Park, but they're always solid as well. So let's see how that one goes. So Arsenal versus Sunderland. The ones to go for here are the Arsenal attackers. So Saka, Gyökeres, Martinelli. There's every possibility of the Arsenal defence getting a clean sheet, and there's bonus points there as well. Avoid Sunderland attackers, but in for Sunderland, there's one defender who, even if their team don't play well, has been scoring highly, and that's Is he called Mukiele, I think? So he's the one to go for. Then, if we move on to Burnley versus West Ham, I can't in good conscience recommend picking Burnley players, but West Ham attackers are the ones to go for. Bowen and Somerville, who's been in excellent form in recent weeks. Brilliant. I'm also going to tip West Ham for a clean sheet and go for Wan-Bissaka. Some of his attacking play in recent weeks under Nuno has been a joy to behold. Amazing. So he gets forward so well. He crosses well. I expect more good things from him in the weeks ahead. After that, the plum tie of the weekend is Liverpool versus City. Now, this game is all about the attackers. So Ekitike, Salah, Szoboszlai, Wirtz for Liverpool, Semenyo and Haaland, who we've just discussed for City. Don't pick defenders from either team here. It's just not worth it. Man United v Spurs. Now, Man United haven't had the best record against Spurs in recent times, but they are on a massive roll under Carrick. They've beaten City, Arsenal, and Fulham on the trot. So the ones to go for here are Man United creative midfielders, Fernandes and Cunha, and their strikers, so Sesko and the mighty Mbermo as well. If you fancy a punt for a Spurs player, I'd go for Romero. He's been knocking them in from set pieces recently, and that gains bonus points even if his team sort of do concede goals. After that, Newcastle versus Brentford. I'm going to go for Brentford here. They've been very calm and composed in most of their recent games, and they've had some great results. Even though the game is at St James's Park, I'm going to go for Brentford, so go for their attackers. And finally, Wolves versus Chelsea. Again, as with Burnley, I can't in good conscience recommend Wolves players either in defence or in their attack. But Chelsea attacking midfielders are the ones to go for. And I'm going to say Enzo and also Reece James, who, as with Wan-Bissaka at West Ham, he loves to get forward and play well for the team. So they are the ones to go for. And the captaincy picks Saka, Fernandes, Somerville, or Enzo. There we go. Shall we move on to the obscure facts section?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's get all obscure.
Shall I read mine
Yeah, go for it.
first? Yeah, so this is about Spurs cockerel symbols. So Spurs cockerel emblem is one of the oldest and most recognisable symbols in English football. It's rooted in the club's name and identity. So the club is named after Sir Henry Percy, who was known as Harry Hotspur. So he was a knight who was reputed to have won spurs in battle and to have enjoyed cockfighting, a sport which is historically associated with bravery and combativeness. So in 1909, Spurs installed a large bronze cockerel standing on a football atop the west stand of White Hart Lane. So, for those of you that don't know, that's their previous ground. And this visually cemented the association between the club and the symbol. So, the cockerel that came to represent defiance, pride, and fearlessness. And these are values that the club wished to project both on and off the pitch. And despite multiple stadium redevelopments and the eventual move from White Hart Lane, the cockerel has remained central to Spurs' identity. And it was reinstalled at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in recent years. There you go. A nice history lesson there, Mark.
I had no idea. Uh, this might be a vague false memory as well. But didn't they have a cockerel that played for
I should
him?
look into that. But it's a bit like extremely quickly, like, there's certain things like you've seen the cockerel since, you were a kid. It's a bit
Yeah,
like, because the cannon on the Arsenal badge, the ships that are present on both badges of the two Manchester teams, like you see them because you've seen them for like so many years, and you don't question why they're there. But yeah, there
no,
you go. Yeah.
but I don't know if it came down to a bit of a scrap. I kind of I kind of feel like Arsenal's cannon's a little bit too overpowered if it was facing Spurs' cockerel.
Shall I hand over to you for the second
Okay then,
obscure fact?
right. Well, yes, my obscure fact. This week, James Milner is closing in on the all-time Premier League record. But did you know that Milner was once sent off by his former PE teacher in primary school in the Premier League?
Ooh, that is
That's right.
juicy.
Decades later, uh, Milner was playing for Liverpool versus Crystal Palace, and Milner was being refereed by John Moss, his former primary school PE teacher, who sent him off for a second bookable offence at the end of the game. Milner knew what was coming. He was already walking before the red card came out, and it didn't cost his team. They still won 4-3, but I thought that was it's a quirk of fate. Quirk of fate there, surely.
I love that story, and it just shows that he's not a teacher's pet, and he's a great player, great career he's had. So, okay, that's all we have time for this week. So, until the next time, keep the faith and like and subscribe to our channels on various social media, and do get involved there if you are so inclined. We are back sometime next week with more TMTG goodness. Till the next time, until all are one.